Good morning, everyone. Glad we can still have this event. My joke for the day is technically NDSU is closed, so we all get the day off, but an extension that doesn't quite happen that way. And so it's why these virtual events are great, so we can all still stay inside and still get some good information. So over the next 20 minutes or so, I just want to kind of cover some updates on weed control and sunflower, starting with some results from the survey last year. So Greg shared with me the results from the 2023 National Sunflower Association survey, led by four very good project leaders. And I'm just going to be sharing the weed portion of the survey today. So what did we find last year during the survey? So what we're looking at here is just the top the top seven weeds that were found during the survey. So basically, these weeds escaped the management plans in these fields. Probably no surprise to anyone that kochia topped the list. A lot of the fields surveyed are in North Dakota and South Dakota, and kochia is just a continual problem for us. So it ended up being 46% of the fields kochia was a problem in. To further break that down, I kind of like how this breakout occurred. So out of those 46% of the fields, 2/3 of them had pretty much what we classified as a light infestation of kochia. About a quarter of them were moderate, and the remaining 10% did have heavy infestations. And so that's definitely what we don't like to see. The next two were redwood pigweed. So a lot of our sunflower growing areas don't quite have water hemp yet. And certainly in North Dakota, at least, we don't have really any fields with Palmer amaranth in sunflower yet. So redwood pigweed is still one of our dominant pigweed species that we're seeing escape our management programs. Green foxtail definitely becoming a much bigger issue for us just because of resistance, and I'll touch on that here in the next couple of slides. And then some of our kind of perennial things that always pop up on the list. So volunteer grains, Canada thistle, certainly always problematic for us. And many crops, but definitely in sunflower as well. To break this out by state, we actually added one more weed at the very bottom. So in all the different states in the one province surveyed, we did not find Palmer amaranth except for in Kansas, where Palmer was found in every field surveyed. And so I do have a few data slides on Palmer at the end. Again, we only found Palmer in Kansas, but I think the important thing is if you have a program that controls Palmer, you'll get the other pigweeds. So that's why I do want to share that data towards the end of this presentation. But just if I look at the North Dakota focus, yeah, we had about 50% of the fields. We had kochia, 65% in South Dakota. So again, our top weed here in the Dakotas for escaping our sunflower management programs. And then just kind of showing the number breakout there for the other weeds that made the list. And for those folks zooming in from other areas, there's just the other states there towards the right side of that chart. So I want to start with green foxtail. So this is a slide from Dr. Brian Jenks. So this is showing some most recent green foxtail resistance testing that Brian conducts at the Minot, or the North Central Research Extension Center up in Minot. So he's been conducting this type of research for about the last 7 years. Goes back further than that, but we're looking at the last 7 years on the slide. And for the most part, a lot of these top ones, these group 1 and group 2 herbicides on the top part of the chart, those are our small grain herbicides. Probably pretty appropriate for us to focus on the bottom 3. Raptor is the same thing as Beyond, or it's actually, they're all called Beyond Extra now as the herbicide trade name. So that's what we can use in our Clearfield sunflower. And then our 2 graminicides we rely on, Assure and Select. Important to point out that this is a targeted survey. So these are fields where green foxtail escaped management sent in for testing. If we had conducted a random survey, we'd have fewer instances of resistance. But here's what the targeted survey is showing. The first from 15 to 2020 did not find any resistance to Beyond. Almost half the samples were resistant to Assure, and then very low resistance to Select or clethodim. The past couple of years, we have seen an increase in resistance to Beyond. In fact, the 2022 samples, basically 1 out of 5 were resistant to Beyond. Assure 2, anywhere between 50 and 75% just based on the year. And then with Select, or clethodim, we're seeing that resistance increasing. And so this becomes, of course, problematic because these are the primary products we rely on post-emergence in sunflower to control green foxtail. And so if we have resistance, it's no surprise we're seeing green foxtail escapes and increasing frequency in our sunflower fields. So that really puts the pressure on using some of our Group 15 herbicides like Dual or Zidua. Really relies on those pre-emergence to control green foxtail when we do have resistance. So that's going to be a problem moving forward, but it's going to just put more pressure on our pre-emergence chemistry to clean up any resistant green foxtail. I want to move on to the 2024 Weed of the Year. Anytime a weed makes the news, I feel like we need to talk about it. So I've got a clip from a newscast back in September in Fargo.
Soybean farmers out in the fields this week and are fighting a tough weed, they say, during this 2023 harvest. Some farmers say the weed cachia has been bad this year and believe it's going to get worse in the future.
So I'm not really sure what cachia is, so I did a Google search, and I do want to give the news anchor full credit. Here's what Google told me how to pronounce this word.
Cachia.
That's the American way to pronounce it.
Cachia.
And the British way. So I want to make sure everyone's awake. It's usually a lot more fun with a room packed full of people, but hopefully everyone is awake and appreciating what we can see on the news. If nothing else, I find inspiration in the weirdest of places, and so I did try my hand at making a cachia pet. And just driving home the point, why is this weed a problem? Well, I can just put it on a clay-based medium in my house under a simple grow lamp, and it will actually grow and produce seed. Did not get very big, but we did produce seed from my cachia pet. All right, now that everyone's awake, back to some serious content here. Why is kochia the weed of the year? Why are we talking a lot more about it in the past couple of years? As we've had some drier weather, we've just kind of maybe not relearned is the right word, but kochia has certainly taken advantage of the drier conditions we've had the past couple of years. The other thing that we focus a lot on the whole past year really is Group 14 resistance. And this is a particular problem for sunflowers, and it's why we're raising awareness. So far we have found Group 14 resistant kochia in 8 counties in North Dakota. We do have current samples in the greenhouse, and we'll probably add a few counties to this map. Should point out that somewhere up here in Saskatchewan, there's confirmed Group 14 resistance. I wouldn't be surprised if we find it in more areas than just North Dakota and Saskatchewan. Since it's relatively new, basically 2021 and 2022 is when this problem kind of first popped up on a pretty wide scale. So not every field in these counties have this resistance, but we certainly have a pretty widespread occurrences of finding resistant populations. And I want to point out why this is a problem for us in sunflower production. So a couple of slides coming up from Dr. Brian Jakes and Minot, because he's really spearheaded a lot of this effort on Group 14 resistance. Some of the first research when we were exploring if it is indeed resistant is looking at the utility of AIM or carfentrazone from a burn down perspective. A susceptible population is up front, a resistant population from the Minot areas in the back, and basically showing we have a pretty high level of resistance. So you can apply 16 ounces of AIM and still not control kochia. And so this became problematic. A lot of fields that Spartan Charge was used in the burn down, we were seeing kochia escapes, which kind of first brought this to our attention and showing that indeed the carfentrazone piece is not really providing control on these kochia populations. Expanding the screen to look at different Group 14 herbicides from a foliar perspective, this is simply a susceptible check. So any green in this picture, we didn't spray a herbicide. So it's always good to know we're working with a true susceptible check. Here's what one of these resistant populations look like. And we have looked at about 8 different populations, and they all respond exactly the same to foliar applied Group 14 products. Non-treated non-treated check in the bottom left. This is Blazer, Flexstar, and Cobra. So some of our Group 14 products we use post-emergence and soybean still does provide these populations, provided you apply it when the kochia is small. I should say kochia was all about 1.5 to 2 inches at application in these greenhouse trials. We did apply both Spartan and Valor post-emergence and did see some suppression, some foliar burn, but certainly not complete control. More of our burn down type products are here on the top. So Sharpen, Reviton, Vita, and AIM. So from a sunflower perspective, AIM would be the main product we would use. Perhaps in a couple of years, we can get Reviton onto the market ahead of something like sunflower. But basically, these burn down products that we use ahead of a lot of crops are not providing kochia control. Residual. This is where it becomes important as well. So susceptible check, we controlled everything. Good news. Resistant populations. So here's what I call our worst case population we saw in these greenhouse trials. And so we planted 20 seed per pot, applied different herbicides, and watered that in, and then monitored growth of kochia afterwards. So non-treated check, that's kind of what we were looking at for what actually grew out of those 20 seeds. This is 4 fluid ounces of Spartan and 8 fluid ounces of Spartan. And this is 3 and 6 fluid ounces of Valor. So certainly in the spring, we're going to rely a lot on Spartan or sulfentrazone for our weed control in sunflower. Can't apply Valor in the spring, but we have relied on this product a lot in the fall to catch the early flushes of kochia, and that may become a problem here. Well, it is a problem now for some, could become a more widespread problem in the future. And so this is where it becomes concerning when we have a somewhat limited portfolio to work with in sunflower and other minor crops as well. So that was kind of our worst case population. I do want to show now a compilation of 7 different populations that Brian had tested. So these different numbers represent different, basically, collections from different townships. Number 7 is our susceptible check. And so the front here is all non-treated. I'll start next in the back row. This is all just 3 fluid ounces of Valor. And for the most part, controlled a susceptible check, except for 1 plant. But basically, high-level mini escapes across all populations from that Valor application. So again, a main take-home for me is if you've been relying on Valor or other flumioxazin formulations in the fall for spring kochia control, and it's not performing like you expect or like you used to remember, could be a sign that we have these group 14 resistant populations. So Spartan, again, our main horse in the spring for residual control, that kind of varies by population. So I point to these 2. Population 6 is from near Mohall, and quite a few escapes, very concerning for us. Population 5, different field, still in the Mohall area, a lot better control. I have talked with Brian, and this has been repeated several times in the greenhouse. More recent trial runs, a little bit better control out of Spartan on the whole. So we think there might be a little bit more hope than this picture shows, but still very concerning. And if you see kochia populations escape a Spartan residual application sooner than you might expect, again, a potential sign for resistance. And then the one last slide on this soil applied greenhouse work. So Brian did package a few things together. So showing now we have 1 susceptible check on the top, 1 on the bottom, and 2 of our group 14 resistant populations here in the middle. Again, showing that Valor is just not performing for us as we would like on these populations. Residual, we always can get some level of suppression on kochia. If we get a good shot of rainfall, we can see better results than some other years. But these populations, that's kind of what we saw in this greenhouse trial. Product like Fierce, where they're packaged together, we're getting overall better results. So even though that flumioxazin piece is not really providing the best level of control for us, when paired with something like pyroxasulfone, we are getting better control. And so this will be certainly a product we look at for fall applications. And then this is also showing potential hope for us with something like Authority Supreme, which is a premix of sulfentrazone and Zidua. So more of these tank mix options are what we're moving towards next to try and get some better results, better resolution on what we can do about these populations. So just to kind of package everything together, another reason why this is troubling for us is we just have limited options for kochia and sunflower. So this slide is basically showing kind of a best shot or best options when we do not have group 14 resistance. And that's kind of a reliance on sulfentrazone, pyroxasulfone, or the group 3 products. So Prowl and Treflan. So no-till production, this kind of does put us into the fall application of granules and hope to get that activated with some snowfall. If you are conventional till incorporation of these products, we don't expect any different activity on group 14 resistant populations. But we do have that group 14 resistance. I've just now made sulfentrazone products red because of that potential loss of activity on those populations. Didn't just I kept Supreme there black because the Supreme part is that pyroxasulfone piece. So something like Authority Supreme may still be a good option. That's something that we'll be exploring further. Just one kind of final piece on the Group 14 resistant kochia before moving on. We are going to have a test available this spring. So working with the National Ag Genotyping Center, who's an independent lab based on based on NDSU's campus in Fargo, we're going to have a quick assay available where you will be able to collect a few leaves from kochia, send it in, and we know the genetic mutation that confers resistance. And so basically within a week or so, get that tested and get results back. And so that's going to be a very good tool for us for raising awareness and knowing if indeed we do have a resistant population, or if that was some other environmental challenge that maybe caused a herbicide failure. So look for a press release from us probably sometime in April. We think this test will be commercially available come May, and we certainly want folks to utilize it because this is a very important thing when knowledge is power and knowing if we have this group 14 resistance. But one final piece just on kochia in general, another really good chart pulled together by Brian Jenks and just showing basically our ratings on how the different products that we can use in sunflower soil applied, how they perform on kochia in general. So this is not group 14 resistance, just kochia in general. And so essentially what we're looking for, knowing we don't have any post-emergence options in sunflower, is anything that gets us that excellent control. And this does really put us into these sulfentrazone type products. So again, if you don't have group 14 resistance, definitely a recommendation to use one of these premixes to get us a good starting point for kochia control. Last kind of set of thing I want to cover here is just some pigweed data. So again, the focus here, the data presented will be Palmer amaranth, but if you control Palmer amaranth, you're going to control certainly redroot pigweed. Pretty good chance you're picking up water hemp as well if you have a good program for Palmer. And where these data are generated from is from a grant from the NSA. So definitely thankful for the support behind this. Dr. Quincy Law led these efforts, and I should say don't email him here. Quincy did move down to Iowa State about a month or two ago. So I'm basically presenting what Quincy found before he did switch positions and move down to Iowa. What we really looked at for this trial, again, kind of focused around pigweeds, is looking at all the different group 15 products. So we can use dual magnum and Zidua currently in sunflower production, but things like Warrant, Outlook, Flufinistet, you probably might know best as Define, so a product we used in wheat several years ago. Just different group 15 products that we might be available for use is kind of the goal of this product. And then Prowl H2O is kind of our group 3 check from a pre-emergent standpoint, relying on rainfall for activation. We had all those products with and without sulfentrazone. And so 4 ounces is about 8 fluid ounces of Spartan. So I know that's going to be a lot higher than many folks might want to apply, but these were all conducted in Eastern North Dakota, and then 8 ounces is labeled for that soil type. So we want to see these group 15 products and Prowl with and without that rate of Spartan. So quick note is that we didn't observe injury all too often. Whenever we saw injury, we'd see about less than 10%. Usually some textbook group 15 injury, that drawstring effect where it seems like basically you grab that main vein at the base of the leaf and pull it in, pulling that leaf tip in. But that's usually was that first true pair or the second pair of leaves is where we would see injury, and then normal growth afterwards. So showing results. So again, the focus here is Palmer. So this is 2022 data. So I'm going to start here. We did have hand weeded checks, and those of course we got 100% weed control. So with the statistics here, anything that also has an A next to it is similar to our hand-weeded checks. So here we had pyroxasulfone, so Zidua, with that rate of Spartan. So basically authority supreme. That gave us similar control to our check. Otherwise, here we had Outlook, which is not labeled currently, with Spartan, also similar control to the check. Everything else was lower on the control level, but for the most part, when we had these Group 15 products, when we mixed them with Spartan, is when we were getting pretty good control, kind of the next level of control after those hand-weeded checks and the higher level of control there. What didn't perform as well for us was flufenicet, and then had some issues with pendimethalin or prowl, which the Group 3 chemistry in general has kind of struggled on Palmer amaranth control for a number of years. So these bars on the far right, I would expect better control on something like redroot pigweed or water hemp. This is kind of the nature of dealing with Palmer amaranth and using the Group 3 products. 2023 data did not have time to get the letters on top, so just really showing the averages here. But basically, here's our hand-weeded checks with complete control. And if I look at kind of this cohort of different products that are kind of the next level, in this case, about 70 to 75% control. In many cases, we did not see it's as good of control in 23 as we did in 22. But basically, these gray bars where we had Spartan added in. So something like Spartan and metolachlor, we have that in Broadax. Again, so either Zidua by itself, so we could do something like Anthem Flex, or that Authority Supreme type product, very good control, or kind of better control that we get out of our herbicides at least. We did have a couple different rates of Outlook, so this higher rate probably won't be labeled, unfortunately, but that's kind of the next level where we saw control. But again, kind of showing what we're seeing here for control out of these different programs. Again, don't really have time to get into the yield data, but did want to show one of the goals of this is if these products are safe, there's certainly going to be different fits beyond just the pigweeds, beyond something like kochia, a bunch of the other weeds we might deal with. And so ultimately, to get these products registered in sunflower, we need to make sure there's no residue in sunflower. So we're still finalizing residue analysis from 2023. But in 2022, when we brought these to yield, submitted it to a lab, we had no detect of any product that we applied in the seed at the end of the year. So minimal injury. Again, not really getting into the yield data, but yield data was basically equivalent. So no injury, did not see much of yield loss, and did not see any residue in the seed. So we're going to continue. Well, we've got 2 years of this. We're going to kind of work with the companies to see if anyone's interested in getting a different Group 15 product registered in sunflower. If nothing else, it will certainly give us just more options within that same chemistry. And that can be a good thing, as we saw a couple of years ago when we had some supply chain issues. So for the full presentation that Dr. Law presented at the Sunflower Association reporting session, that's what this QR code will bring you to. A couple of his favorite pictures of when we do get palmer escapes. They like to be taller than sunflowers. And I think this was Dr. Law's favorite picture on the right, had water hemp growing through some slight hail injury on this plant. So just showing these pigweeds will just do whatever they want if they escape our management. One final note, if you're into podcasts, I've got one for some colleagues from Kansas and Ohio State. So about 30-minute episodes is what we shoot for. I like to say there's an episode for everyone, but not every episode is for everyone. So I don't think we've actually done a sunflower episode yet, so I need to make a mental note. We should probably do that. But we've got about 100 or so episodes out, and encourage you to listen in. We certainly have kochia and Palmer amaranth focused episodes. And Greg, I'll finish here. Some contact information, electronic version of the 2024 weed guide. That's what that QR code will bring you to. And we certainly have hard copies available at local RECs, county offices, or at the distribution center on Fargo's main campus.